Hello everybody and welcome to the channel. If you're new here, please click on like and subscribe. If you've been here before, welcome back. So today I'm going to be building a 3-tier step stool out of walnut with fold out bottom 2 steps. So I've got a couple other videos building these stools online. I've changed a few things here. A couple of the measurements have changed here and there. And just the way I put things together is a little bit different. So I just wanted to do an updated video so everyone can see how they're made. Now if you need a copy of the cut list, you can pause on that list I showed you before, or drop a comment down below and I can send you a link to them. Again, this video is more for showing how it's assembled, not necessarily how to assemble it. So first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to take my raw wood and I'm going to cut off the ends of it, and I'm looking for a spot where the wood's clean and not broken in the middle. So I'm just going to nip off a few pieces until I get a nice flat smooth surface on the end. Now again, you can use pre-milled lumber. If you go to a box store, Lowe's or somewhere like that, you can get 3/4 inch lumber and not have to do the milling or the planing of the wood. What I'm doing now is I'm just getting my rough cuts for my A, B, C, D, E, F, G, and H. That's my designations. So that's my rough cut wood, not cut to length yet, and you'll see a couple of small pieces laying here and there. I do multiples of these, so sometimes I have extra A's or extra B's or C's laying around. So my next step is just cutting the ends of the boards off. So I've got nice clean surfaces. So when I go to cut my strips, whether they're whatever letter designation they are, A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H, I, J, I've got all nice straight edges when I go to cut them. And that way I can cut the width of my boards and it'll be even every time. Before I do that, I'm going to go ahead and plane all my boards. My A's and B's, since one piece is 6 inches roughly, the other piece is 10 inches, it's easier to leave them on one board and cut them out later. Goes through the planer easier. So the next step is to cut all my support pieces, my legs, my supports, my side pieces. They're all going to be 1 3/4, so I'm going to cut these all at the same time. So I'm basically going to cut part A, B, C, D, E, F, and that way they're all exactly the same width. If you're off 1/16 of an inch or whatever you're off on every piece so it matches when you build it. Ideally, you want them at 1 3/4. The next, I'm going to go ahead and cut my top, and then I'm going to cut my 2 steps. And I'm not really going to do much with the J, which is the end pieces, which are my stair risers. I'm going to tape those together, and I'm going to cut the stair risers out at the same time. So my 2 steps here, I'm just basically looking at the wood, trying to find the better part of the grain. You want a nice pattern in these. Sometimes, depending on the wood you buy or the wood you get, doesn't always have the best patterns in them, so I try to find the best patterns that I possibly can without wasting a lot of the wood. So I do put a little bit of thought into this. So like on this piece here, as you can see, my left-hand side over here has got more straight grain to it. The right-hand side in the middle has more of a nice wavy pattern. I want to cut that left-hand side of the board off, so I've got a nicer pattern for my top piece when I cut it out. So back over my table, my A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H, I, J. That's all my parts cut out, plain to size. Width is the correct sizes. I still need to make the lengths correct. So to do my A and B and my C and my D, that's my legs and my side frame is set up. I want a 5-degree angle on all these pieces. So I set my saw to 5 degrees. I'm going to cut the tips just to make sure they're flush. I'm going to flip them over and then cut the other side to the appropriate length, which in my case is going to be 5 inches. I'm going to do my same thing for my B's and my C's and my D's. Now my C's and my D's are my legs. I want to go ahead and tape my legs together. That way I have all 4 legs taped together, and that way when I cut them, they all cut evenly. Now you can use a stop if you want to. Some people prefer to do a stop. I'd rather tape them together and cut them all at the same time. That way, if they're taped together, they're not going to move, and you're not going to have a problem with your legs. So if you've got something wobbly, it's not because you cut your legs wrong, and it makes it a whole lot easier at the end, not having to try to fix a wobbly leg on something like this. So again, 5-degree cut on one side. I'm going to slide it straight through and do a 5-degree cut on the other side since I want these sloping inward. And I want my overall height to be 24 inches, so I'm going to cut this at 23 1/4. 3/4 inch top will make my 24 inch total. Now I'm cutting my E's and my F's. Again, like I said, it was easier to plane them, run them through at the same time. And I'm just going to cut these down to size. I tape these also, that way when I cut them, they're already grouped together. And all my scrap pieces, you can see, go into a box. I make Montessori blocks out of the rest of the pieces. So any end over scraps, I try not to waste anything that I don't have to waste. It gets turned into something if possible. So back over my parts, they're all together now. They're all the same width. They're all the same thickness. I got to make the same length out of my tops. And I want to run my tops through here. Again, I've cut these a little bit longer. I want this 15.5, so I've cut it at 16. And I've already run it through my table saw, so I know my width is correct. But I want to make sure my length is correct on both ends. So when I first made that first cut, if the board was a little bit crooked, this will square my top up. That way you're ensured to get a square top. And same thing with my small steps. I cut them a little bit longer. I'm going to cut them at the same time, so I've got exactly the same width on both my steps. And then I've got square steps, square top. The last thing I do is make sure all my width's the same across there. If they're all the same, I go ahead and start sanding down. If they're not the same, I can run them through my planer and my joiner to get them exactly the same. In this case, I'm just going to sanding. So as you can see, I'm already down to this end. I cut off a lot of sanding. This is probably an hour's worth of sanding. When at both sides of the wood, I'm just using an 80 grit for now. I will go back with a 120 later and smooth it out a little bit more. So there's everything sanded down, ready to go. All my pieces are together. Make sure I got all my parts for assembly. Make sure everything looks clean and ready to go. Onto my stair riser. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to tape these together. So I'm going to cut both stair risers at the same time. They'll basically mirror each other. So what I want to do is I want to make sure I've got two edges that are perfectly smooth. So I've ran them through my table saw and the skill saw already, or the chop saw. So I know I've got two smooth edges. I'm not worried about the other two edges because I'm going to draw the picture on here and then we're going to cut out the extra. So as long as the pieces that are hanging over are off the edge of our drawing, we're good to go. If not, you need to fix something. So my two straight edges are there. Again, I'm just penciling this out. I'm going to take it over to the chop saw. And if you did it right, all your angles should end up the same every time. You should end up with like a 10-degree cut, a 40-degree cut, and a 90 across the top, and a 90 across or down the middle and across the stairs, if that makes sense. And I'm just retaping there to make sure they hold in place. Now, your chop saw, you can use a bandsaw, which I'll use to finish cutting this, but it's easier for me to do the big cuts with the chop saw. I'm just putting a little spacer in there so I don't actually cut further into the stair riser than I want to. And I'm just watching my blade and make sure I don't come through. Again, the blade's curved, so it's going to look different on the other side, but that's close enough for now. I'm going to go over to the bandsaw. I'm going to finish cutting those two little pieces off, and then I'm going to check and make sure they're smooth. After that, we're going to put the hole in it for the rod. So the rod we're going to put through here is going to be a 7/8 inch. And we want this about 1 inch in from both sides here. And I've got some original videos I've done on how to figure out where that is. If you want to watch those, you can go back and watch those later. But that's the height you need to do an 8 3/4 inch hole on the legs and have them line up perfectly straight. If you change the size of your riser, you need to change the holes and everything else. I'm going to round over the edges on everything now. I'm going to round the corners off also. And when you're doing these risers, when I do the top part of the riser, I'll do it last. I've got to take my top off and make sure when you cut in, you don't cut in so far that you actually dig into the bottom part where the stair goes. Back again to my assembly table. Everything is done. Everything's rounded off now. On my inside pieces, as you can see, I only did 2 with a half side done, and I did 2 with both sides done, and you'll see why in just a minute. And here we are back to the sandpaper, back to the 120. So we're going to hit everything with a 120 now. And again, we're just going to look and make sure there's no cracks, no splices, no pencil marks, nothing on there. We'll have to sand this again once it's assembled to get any glue or anything off. But again, it's easier to do all the sanding now than to go back later and try to get a saw mark or something out where it's difficult to get to with a little hand sander. So it's easier just to make sure everything's smooth when you put it together. The dowel rod also, we make our own dowel rods here. I do outsource them every now and then, but for the most part, we make our own rods in-house. And there's a couple videos I've got just making dowel rods that show you how to do that if you want to know how to make your own dowel rods. So 7/8 inch dowel rod, we're going to put it through here first. I've got my little piece of plywood here. I've kind of set up just to assemble these stools. It's got a straight edge at the end, so I know where the straight edge is. I'm going to take my parts E, and I'm going to put it in here, and I'm going to space these 3 inches from the front, 3 inches from the dowel rod. I'm putting a little spacer underneath there so they don't lay flat on the bottom, and that's why I curved the edges of both of these. So when you put them together, they look good on the back side, and they still support the inside of the stairs. All these get screws in them eventually. The glue that I put on here would be enough to hold it, but we add the screws for extra stability. Now, as far as glue goes, it's not like a cutting board, but it is like a cutting board. You want your glue to squish out, but the more glue that squishes out, the more glue you got to clean up. And since we're using Titebond too, it's a little bit harder to clean up. So I want to make sure I get a little squish out, but not enough that it goes everywhere. And again, we're putting screws in this later also for more support, but we're going to let the glue set up good before we even put the screws in. Once I've got them set in place, I'm going to put a clamp in there temporarily. It's not tight yet, and I'm measuring these. Again, I want 3 inches in. You can change yours if you wanted 2.5. You could do 2.5, 3 inches, 4 inches, one clamp. All up to you. That's just how I decided to do mine. I think they look good and they support well. And again, once you glue that in, make sure you wipe off any excess glue now. It's a whole lot easier to clean now than it is later. Now for my stair supports, I'm going to mark 2.5 inches down on both the top and the bottom. And that's where our piece with the only one rounded off edge goes. The flat side goes underneath the step at the top here. Now my clamps at the bottom are not tight yet. They're just snug. So basically when I tighten this up here, the top's going to pull the bottom outward, if that makes sense, if you've done woodworking. So basically I want it tight enough to hold it in place, but I don't want it so tight that when I go to tighten these up, it doesn't level itself out. Once I've got everything square up here, I'm going to double check it and then tighten my clamps down. Now this is one of the main things I've changed from the way I used to do it with the mortise and tenons with the drill press and the skill saw. I've got a Domino or a Festool Domino tool now, and I've been doing it with that. So our bottom piece that I'm putting in there now, I've got the measurements for it. If you want to change the height or the width, you can do that based off of laying it out like this. So once I've got my top clamps on, that's got my 5-degree locked in place. So I can slide that piece up and down to where I want it at. If, let's say you measure, let's say you're 5.5 degrees at the top, that may change how high that piece goes at the bottom. So it may go a little higher, a little bit lower, depending on your exact angle. This way you can fit it in perfectly every single time, as long as you're within, half a degree or so. Once I get it in line, I'm just going to mark the center of both pieces on the top and the bottom. Then I'm going to letter them A, B, C, D, and I'm going to do the same thing for the other side. And then we're going to go to the Festool and we're going to put some dominoes in. Now this tool took a lot to get me to buy. If you've priced them, you'll know why. Didn't know how much I was going to use it. Ended up, this is one of my more popular selling items, so it pays for itself by far, much better than the drill press. Drill press worked great. It just took much longer to do the same joinery. With this, you push them in, you put in a biscuit, you get a super tight joint, probably as tight, if not tighter than the ones I was doing with the drill press, and in 1/5 of the time, not to mention the setup time for the jigs it took to set it up. If you've got one of these Festools, drop a comment down below. Let me know how you like it. You can also hit super thanks if you want to help me pay for it. I'd appreciate it. So I'm just putting a little bit of glue on these dominoes here, tapping them into place. They lock in super tight on these mortises. Then I'm going to glue it up and put my legs together. So same as before, I'm putting some glue on here. I'm using a brush to spread it out evenly. Again, we want squish out. We just don't want a ton of squish out. If you don't get any squish out at all, you probably need to pull it back apart, put some more glue on it. And I'm just making sure everything is nice and straight. Again, with that Festool, perfect joinery almost right off the bat. Doesn't take much at all to get them lined up. I'm going to tap these back into place where my lines match up. And again, this is where if you were off like 5.5 degrees or whatever you are, you can match that up so it fits nice and evenly. When we put the side pieces in, I'll show you how to do that. We're going to put a straight edge underneath of them so we line it all up. So we're going to set everything over there to dry for probably 4 hours, maybe 6 hours. Once everything's dry, we're going to take it apart, and as you can see, we're sanding again. So this is back to a 120. I'm sanding all my edges, making sure they're nice and smooth. If you have something to fill in, every now and then you get a small crack or something, you can fill it in with wood glue and the dust from a sander if you need to. Again, with this Festool, very rarely do I ever have to fill anything in. The joints are almost perfect every time. Next step is putting the holes in for the dowel rod to hold the bottom assembly up. So basically all I'm doing is I'm looking at my frames and I'm deciding which ones I want inside and which side I want outside. So I pick the better looking ones and turn them outside. The ones I don't like as much put them on the inside. It's really hard with walnut, both, unless you're just using really bad wood. You don't really need to decide, but every now and then there's a knot hole or something like that you don't want to see, so you turn it to the inside. I'm measuring 8 3/4 inches up, and I'm measuring center of the hole, and then we're going to go over to the drill press. I'm going to take a piece of scrap wood, and I'm going to set the drill press so it's 1/2 inch deep. So we're using 3/4 inch wood. I want to go 1/2 inch into this wood. So my dowel rod is 13.5 inches. My extension rods between are 12.5 inches. So that should give me an even space where my dowel rod fits in the hole perfectly, and my extensions also fit in perfectly, and everything locks together. And again, I'm just doing a test drill here. You can drill this into your piece, pull it back up, measure it, do it again, but it's easier for me to just go ahead and set it up with a piece of scrap wood and do the measurements, and then I can adjust it here, and that way I don't have to keep taking my leg on and off. Every now and then you can wobble out your hole if you're not careful, so it's easier just to do on a test piece of wood, measure it, and then do your leg. Sorry about the lighting here. I can see fine. I put the flashlight in there so you can see a little bit better, but it doesn't look like it helped much. I'm just lining up the drill press so it's even, and then we're pushing the hole in 1/2 inch, doing that on both sides. I've got the camera kind of in the best position I can get it in. As you can see, I've got my front legs lined up with my straight edge on the end. I added that again. I made this piece of plywood just for putting these together with. I want to make sure my front stays together, and when you press down, your legs are together. Now make sure you're using a flat surface. If you're not using a flat surface and you do this, you're going to end up with a crooked leg. And before I tighten everything up, you'll see I'm going to put it on the floor. I'm going to put pressure on it and make sure everything's even before I tighten all the clamps. So normally you want to put glue in the hole and not on the rod, at least that I've found, because you end up with more squish out or more mess doing it this way. But it's easier for me, for whatever reason, just to put this one on like this. It holds it in place good enough so I can put the other side on. Now your rod's going to be pinched in there with a couple other things, but make sure when you do this that you got glue on the inside of the hole and on the rod, and you spin it around like 1/8 of a turn, 1/4 of a turn, just enough, kind of like if you were doing plumbing, you get the glue to lock in and the glue touches everywhere. And as I've said multiple times, clean up your mess as you go. It's easier to clean now than it is clean later. So keep a wet towel handy. Now to put my flat pieces on, basically I'm using a ruler there, and I'm measuring these in 1/2 inch from the inside. What I want it to do is when I go to drill my screws through here, I want to get those dominoes that I put in there, and I want the screw to actually go through the domino also. That'll give me a tighter fit. So it's in far enough that my screw will go through the domino and through the support also. Now again, I'm putting these clamps on. I'm working quickly so the glue doesn't dry on me, but I'm not tightening the clamps. I've also got a piece in the front there, my extra 4th piece that you can't really see. There's a clamp in the front there holding that to keep my front stationary. That way the front doesn't collapse inward on me when I'm doing this. And again, my clamps are just snug right now. So I'm going on a flat surface and I'm just putting pressure on everything to make sure everything's stable and I don't have a wobbly step or anything. Then I'm going to snug all my clamps back up. You don't want to super tighten them, but you want them tight enough that the glue sets. Now, as you can see on this front piece, it's still a little bit loose. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put pressure on the front to where it's holding my board in place. And then once I get the clamp in place to where the board just barely pulls out, I'm going to pull the board and I'm going to go to the back side and I'm going to clamp it down on the back side. That'll put pressure on the front side and that'll square my top piece up. So my bottom's already squared out. I just need to make sure my top stays square, so when I put the top on it, it doesn't look like it's crooked. Next thing I'm going to do is pick up my stairs. I'm going to put my stairs on. I'm just looking at them, making sure I pick the side that I like best, looking for any blemishes, anything that might not look right, and picking the way I want the pattern to go. And we're going to glue these on. Again, same as everything else. We want glue on them. We want enough glue on there that it squishes out a little bit, but not all over the place. Again, we're going to put screws in these to hold them in just to make sure they stay stationary because it is a step stool. This will all hold together with glue by itself. I've done them with glue by myself. The one I've got at my house is only glued. I'm a good 210 pounds on a good day, and it holds me up just fine with glue only. but I do screw these for customers just for that extra support. I'm putting these on, just making sure they're even, and we're going to tighten the clamps up slowly. If we get any movement, I'm going to check it after I get the clamps on, and then we're going to tighten the clamps up. Now around to the back, like we were talking about earlier, I've got the clamp in place. I've got the clamp so it just barely holds the wood in, so I've got a nice even fit there. And on my back, I'm going to do the same thing. So if I'm loose, I'm going to tighten it up a little bit. If it's too tight, I'm going to take my clamp and reverse it and spread it out. Mine's pretty close the way it is. I had to tighten it up a little bit. And I'm just measuring crossway to crossway. And I've got like 16¼ inches both directions, which means I'm good and square on the top. Again, glue on, spread the glue out good. Put your top on, take a measurement, measure it, get it lined up where you want it at. Once you get everything square, clamp it down. And I'm going to put a clamp across the middle of it also to put pressure downward on the middle of the board once I get the outside edges clamped in place so it doesn't move. And I'm going to leave that back piece in. I'm just going to put it up higher and make sure you don't get glue on that and glue it in. I want that to stay in place until everything's seated and glued. That way nothing shifts. The front doesn't shift out, the back doesn't shift out, and we end up with a crooked top. So I'm leaving that top piece in the back, but again, make sure it doesn't glue itself into place. Now we will be using that for a stop, so don't get rid of that piece when you pull it out of there when everything is done. We're going to use that to keep the stairs from falling all the way back when we're done. But we got to wait till the glue's dry first. So everything's clamped up, waiting to go, and voila, clamps are all off. So I'm taking my piece that I pulled out of the back here. I'm going to set my saw to 30 degrees. Now this is just my personal preference. It seems to be where the seat sits the best at, depending on the size you're making. If you're making one for yourself, you can cut this however you want it, or you can just leave it flat. I want enough angle on here that it leaves just a little flat surface on the top. So see that little flat edge? That just makes it look better for me than a straight 45 edge, plus it's not as sharp. I'm going to fit this in place, and if you did everything right once your glue's dry, that should fit in there nice and snug like it's doing for me without any clamps or anything holding it in place. I'm going to fold my steps back, and I want to measure the height. As you can see, I've done a couple of these, probably 100 of them by now. So I'm pretty good at eyeballing it. But basically, slide that in, check the height, and find out where the seat's going to sit properly and look good to you at. I put a clamp in there. It's set to reverse, so it's spreading the wood apart just a little bit. I'm going to glue this, and the only reason I'm spreading it apart a little bit, and it's a little bit, it's not a lot. I'm not putting any pressure on anything that doesn't need any pressure on it. But it's enough just that when I push this in, I don't get glue all over the sides of my board. When I take the clamp out, the sides will come back in, and basically the pressure will hold it in place. Once I fold my steps back, I'm going to do any adjustments I need, a little rubber mallet, and I just want to make sure it's touching all the way across there. And that way it sits flushly. That way when it comes back, it sits evenly. Again, that's just to stop the stairs from rolling all the way back through. And it's also there for a little extra side support. So I'm just making marks now and lining up where I'm going to put my screws at. I want to make sure I'm in the middle of my boards, and I want to measure the same on everything. That way I don't have dowels all over the place, because we are going to dowel plug it at the end. I don't want to look like crap with it not measured in the perfect places. It would hold just fine, but it's not going to look pretty if you just put dowels anywhere you want or screws anywhere you want. I'm using a countersink bit here. I'm using a 3/8 countersink. Sometimes I use 10mm, depends on what I'm doing or how big I want the plugs to be. It also depends on how many plugs I'm making. I make the plugs with a CNC machine. Again, I've got another video that shows you how to make these plugs if you want to make your own. You can also, if you're buying box store wood, or if you're getting it from Lowe's or Home Depot, you can buy 3/8 inch dowel rods over there, and you can just use dowel rods, put them in, and cut them off as you're plugging your holes up. Again, I try not to waste any scrap wood, so all the scrap wood gets used for something until it gets down to little pieces or basically dust. So I use those to make plugs with. Just using a compressor, make sure I get all the dirt out of there so I don't crack anything when I run a screw into it. And the drill hole, the preset hole, is the same length as my screw. So when I'm putting these screws in, I'm not cranking these down even though I'm using an impact. I don't have the sound on, but they're not clicking. I'm basically running them until they stop and leaving them. There's my little plugs I'm going to use. We're going to go back and we're going to glue these. And you don't need a ton of glue. Again, same thing. The plugs I've got, they're CNC'd to fit the holes pretty precisely, so they actually got to take a hammer sometimes and tap them in place. But I want to put glue on both sides, and then I'm going to put them in, and I'm going to rotate them slightly. So when I put them in, if I put them in straight, I'm going to rotate them like 90 degrees or 45 degrees, and that way the glue gets all over the hole when it gets glued on all the sides. So I push them in, I give them a little turn. So now it's just watching me put more screws in. I've got this at 1,000 speed forward. So this is probably a good hour's worth of work between getting all the screws in, all the plugs in. But we're going to screw everything in. We're going to put all the plugs in. Once the plugs get in, we're going to let it dry for like 45 minutes or so. It doesn't have to be super dry. You want it dry enough that the plugs don't fall out of the hole if you've got loose plugs. If they're tight like mine and you got to hammer them in the first place, you can probably cut them right away. It's just a matter of getting glue all over your saw. Once that's done, we're back to sanding for the 5th, 6th, 7th, 8th time, whatever we're at. Again, I'm still using the 120 here. I'm going to get the dowels down. Make sure when you're sanding these dowels off, you don't just dig in and take the dowel out because you're going to leave a pit in there. Unfortunately, you have to sand across the entire stool step or the entire piece to keep it level. Now, if you've got a piece that's sticking up a good bit, you can work the end of it and you can focus on the high spot. But again, once it starts to get leveled out, if you don't level sand it, you're going to end up with dents and you're going to feel it as you step on the stool or put your hand on the stool. And then once you get all of it done, just blow it off, make sure everything's good, make sure you get all the glue off. If you have glue on this, when you go to oil it, if you don't get all the glue off around the pegs, it will stand out like a sore thumb. So make sure you get all the glue off of it. And the next thing I want to do is I'm going to put it on the floor and I'm going to put my fat butt up on there and we're going to test it. And if I feel any wobbles, any shakes, any shimmies, anything wrong, it gets fixed or it gets taken out of the system and recycled. It's nice and stable, so I'm just going to blow everything off. Once I get it cleaned off, I'm going to wipe it down with a microfiber towel. Then we're going to take it in and we're going to wax it. And waxing it to me is like painting. I hate doing it. It seems like it takes forever. Probably takes a good 30 minutes, 45 minutes to do this. I'm going to fast forward through a little part of it just to show you the few steps. It's basically put the wax on, wipe it on. Usually give it a day or two and then I'll do this one more time. Or before I ship it out to a customer, I'll wax it one more time. And the hardest part is just getting all the pieces you can't see. You'll do this for 45 minutes and you'll think you got it all done and you'll flip it over and there'll be a big splotch on the bottom that you missed. So just take your time and do this the best you can. And again, just so you get the idea, I flipped it over and as you can see, there's a whole bunch of stuff on the bottom that I've missed. I'm not going to do the feet on the bottom because you don't want it sliding all over the place. They're going to get dirty anyhow. But if you sell this to someone with hardwood floors or tile floors or something, you don't want it slipping all over the place on them. And if they want to put something like felt tips or something on there, they can put them on the nice clean wood and they don't have to worry about sanding the wax off there to put the felt tips on there. And again, just go back through, make sure you hit all the spots that you didn't get before and give it a couple days, wax it one more time, or again, wax it before you ship it out to somebody. And so there's our finished product. Hope everyone enjoyed the video. Please click on like, subscribe, drop a comment down below. If you have any questions, let me know. Again, if you want that cut list or if you need more information on it, drop it in the comments down below. I'll get back to you as soon as I can.